Steel Vengeance, one of the most beautiful but also problematic roller coasters ever built. I was lucky enough to get 3 rides on this amazing roller coaster back in October and found it to be one of the best roller coasters ever built. Steel Vengeance provides a long ride experience with the ride never seeming to let up, including many moments of ejector airtime. However, to find the roots of Steel Vengeance, we need to go back to the year 1989 when Cedar Point would open Magnum XL 200, the world's first hypercoaster, any coaster over the height of 200 feet. Magnum would lead to an event known as the Coaster Wars, a time between 1989 and 2005 where theme parks around the world would try to build the next record-breaking coaster. Cedar Point would be heavily involved in the Coaster Wars, with Cedar Point following up Magnum with Mantis and Raptor. Mantis opening as the world's tallest stand-up coaster, and Raptor opening as the world's tallest inverted coaster. Even though these coasters were record-breaking in their type, they would not break the record as the world's tallest coaster, but Cedar Point would take the record back in 2000 with Millennium Force, the world's first Giga coaster, any coaster over the height of 300 feet, till a month later when Steel Dragon 2000 opened in Japan as the new world's tallest, fastest, and longest roller coaster, but is still holding the record of the world's longest roller coaster at over 8,000 feet. And then in 2003, Cedar Point would build the world's new tallest roller coaster, Top Thrill Dragster, the world's first strata coaster, any coaster over 400 feet, with dragster standing at a height of 420 feet, hitting a max speed of 120 miles an hour. It would not only be the world's tallest roller coaster, but also the fastest till 2005, when Six Flags Great Adventure would open King Ka, the world's new tallest and fastest roller coaster, standing at a height of 456 feet and hitting a top speed of 128 miles an hour. This would mark the end of the Coaster Wars, but the Coaster Wars would not only affect steel coasters, but also wooden coasters, with Hercules opening in 1989, the same year as Magnum, as the new tallest wooden roller coaster with a height of 98 feet and a drop of 151 feet. The next world's tallest wooden roller coaster would come in 1990 with the Texas Giant at Six Flags Over Texas, standing at a height of 143 feet, making it 45 feet taller than Hercules. However, since Hercules had a larger drop at 151 feet, each marketed their coaster as the world's tallest wooden roller coaster. This would lead to the parks suing one another. However, this did not really matter, as a year later, in 1991, Cedar Point would open Mean Streak, the new world's tallest wooden roller coaster, standing at a massive 161 feet and using 1.5 million board feet of southern yellow pine. People would come from all over the world to experience the all-new Mean Streak. However, Mean Streak would only remain the world's tallest wooden roller coaster for a year, as in 1992, Six Flags Fiesta Texas would open Rattler, the new world's tallest wooden roller coaster, at an impressive 179 feet. However, the introduction of Rattler would not affect the popularity of Mean Streak as much as the rough ride experience. Mean Streak was built in a time of extremely large wooden coasters that would age terribly. The Den Corporation, RCCA, or the Roller Coaster Corporation of America would go back and forth on who would have the larger wooden coaster. Then would build Texas Giant and Mean Streak, and RCCA would build Rattler and Son of Beast. Son of Beast would end the Coaster Wars of wooden roller coasters. Not one of these 4 coasters are standing the way it was when it opened, due to all of them providing a rough ride experience. Son of Beast, for example, is known as one of the worst and also the roughest wooden coasters ever built. But luckily for Cedar Point, Mean Streak was not nearly as bad as Son of Beast was. But they would still make changes to the ride, trying to provide an overall better ride experience for guests that still chose to ride Mean Streak. They would do this by adding trim brakes to the first drop of the ride, trying to slow it down to reduce wear of the wooden track and supports. Another change Cedar Point made to improve the ride experience of Mean Streak was by adding floating bins to reduce the movement of Mean Streak's wooden structure. This would include reprofiling parts of the ride, trying to make the guest experience better. However, not only was the ride still quite rough, the trims and reprofiled layout made many complain about a boring ride experience. Let's compare Mean Streak to another Den Corporation wooden roller coaster of this time, the Texas Giant, which was said to have had a very similar layout and was known as a great coaster till it just became too rough to ride. Texas Giant had tighter transitions, leading to a more exciting ride experience compared to Mean Streak. So not only was Mean Streak unbearably rough, it was also not exciting. and the changes made to the ride by Cedar Point would affect the way guests view Mean Streak more than ever. In 2011, American roller coaster manufacturer Rocky Mountain Construction would enter on the scene with another Din Corporation wooden roller coaster, Texas Giant, now known as the new Texas Giant. The ride would end up being a hit, and RMC was able to sell another coaster to another park in Texas, Iron Rattler, for the 2013 season, the first hybrid coaster to include an inversion. As you can see, record-breaking wooden coasters of Mean Streak's time were now being changed for the better, with many thinking that Mean Streak could possibly be one of the next coasters to get the Iron Horse treatment. In 2016, Cedar Point would announce Mean Streak, the wooden roller coaster that opened back in 1991, would be getting the axe, with Cedar Point having a funeral for the ride that year, with Cedar Point saying that Mean Streak would never open the way we knew it again. Later that year, and into 2017, people would discover that RMC was in fact giving Mean Streak the Iron Horse treatment, with RMC trucks being seen on site at Cedar Point and a Twitter account named The New Mean Streak that is rumored to have been started by the park, started to post updates on the ride's construction. During the time, the first pieces of iron I-box track were seen on site at Cedar Point. Originally, RMC proposed the idea of a RMC about the size of Mean Streak. However, RMC knew this was not good enough, so they would add about 40 feet to the ride's lift hill, making it the world's first hyper-hybrid roller coaster, with Cedar Point officially announcing Steel Vengeance on August 16, 2017, with the ride staying at a height of 205 feet, hitting a max speed of 74 miles an hour. Steel Vengeance would be the world's tallest and fastest hybrid coaster, but not only that, it would also be the longest at a length of 5,740 feet. The layout being as follows: you make a small 180-degree right-hand turn out of the station and then hit two small airtime hills before climbing the 205-foot lift hill, before dropping down 200 feet at 90 degrees. Right after the drop, you hit another small airtime hill before flying up into a top hat, then to a 116-foot outer bank turn, before entering the ride's first of four inversions, a 0G roll before entering a half stall into a double up that leads you into the mid-course brake run that slows the train slightly before dropping to another double up before entering a twisted airtime hill that leads into two back-to-back 0G rolls and finally into an overbank curve into the final brakes. This is one of the best layouts ever and is full of ejector airtime and should be known as Alan Schulke's masterpiece. However, we cannot talk about Steel Vengeance without talking about the problems the ride would have. From its opening day, Steel Vengeance would open with Cedar Point on May 5th, 2018, running two of its three trains due to issues with the weight of the trains and using the mid-course brake run as a block zone. For anyone who is unfamiliar, a block zone is a section of ride that only one train may occupy. At the end of a block zone is a method to stop a train. This is a safety system that keeps roller coaster trains from colliding. The mid-course brake run would cause issues with valleying because one of the rails on the brakes was slightly raised, causing an issue from a dead stop. So Cedar Point removed it as one of the ride's block zones until RMC could fix the issue with it. However, this was not the only issue that Cedar Point would have with the brakes on Steel Vengeance, as on its opening day, the train on the final brake one would collide with the train in the station. Luckily, no one was seriously injured in the crash, with the ride reopening an hour before closing, only running one train, with everyone involved in the crash returning to park that night. So what caused the crash? Well, Cedar Fair, the parent company of Cedar Point, told RMC that they wanted new trains for their two new coasters for that year, Steel Vengeance and Twisted Timbers. They ended up being much heavier than expected, causing the mags on the final brakes to not have enough strength to stop the heavier trains when they were full of riders, causing the crash, and not a mistake by the staff, because at the time of the crash, Steel Vengeance was running where they could not send the train out unless the block zone ahead was clear, meaning there was no way that the staff had any chance of causing the crash. Now I need to talk about the issues with the structure of Steel Vengeance. RMC and Cedar Fair would make the decision to add 40 feet to the structure of Mean Streak, along with many other changes made to the structure to turn Mean Streak into Steel Vengeance. RMC's inexperience of building a coaster of this size showed. Let's compare Steel Vengeance to another hyper-hybrid Iron Gwazi. The biggest difference that you will notice between the two coasters is that Iron Gwazi used the RMC truss lift A much better steel structure holds a massive lift hill together. Another thing you will notice comparing steel bandits and iron gwazi is the movement of the original structure of steel bandits and iron gwazi. If you look at steel bandit structure for its first few years, you'll see the structure moves a large amount each time the train goes over the track. Movement of wooden structure is a good thing because it puts less stress on the ride. However, the structure moves too much, it can cause boards to crack and bolts to come loose. Iron gwazi does not have these same issues, and shows how much RMC has improved since steel bandits. However, RMC and Cedar Point were not going to give up on steel bandits that easy. RMC would work on making changes to the structure of steel bandits. The structure does not move near as much as it did back in 2018, and also, the structure no longer sounds like it's trying to rip itself apart each time the train goes over the track. Even though steel bandits had its problems, it was and still is a totally safe ride, has been thrilling thousands of riders each and every year since it opened in 2018, with the ride pulling some of the longest lines at any park in the world. Have you ever taken on the wildest ride in the West? Give me your thoughts on steel bandits in the comments below. Bye guys, see you all next time.